Hello and welcome to today's webinar, 3 Ways to Power Your Case Management with Content Analytics. I'm Teresa Resick, Director of Webinars here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And with me today are Nathaniel Palmer of Serco and David Jeunesse of IBM. And IBM is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them for their support. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, I just want to offer a few pointers for you to view today's webinar. By joining our webinars live, you can customize your own viewing experience, so feel free to open, close, or resize the different windows. And across the bottom of your screen is a list of all of the widgets available to you. You can download a PDF of the presentation at any time. Just look to the resources list, and there are also a few other documents and links in there to help you learn more about today's topic. Feel free to ask questions throughout the hour using the Q&A feature. We will hold them until the end, where we should have about 5 to 10 minutes to answer them. You can also use this feature to comment or ask for technical assistance. At the end of this webinar, a brief survey will open into your browser, and I'd greatly appreciate it if you would take a few moments to offer your feedback and to suggest other topics for us to cover. You can also access the survey within the list of widgets that's across the bottom of your screen. And as always, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Webinars in just a few days. I just want to take the time now to introduce our speakers today. I'm very pleased to have both these gentlemen with us. Nathaniel Palmer is a best-selling author, speaker, practitioner, and influential thought leader in business process management. Nathaniel has been the chief architect for large-scale and complex projects involving investments of $200 million or more. He is currently Director of Solutions Architecture with Serco, offering a service portfolio across BPM and case management, operational intelligence, and decision management. He also serves as Executive Director of Workflow Management Coalition, the industry's longest-standing BPM adoption group. And we also have joining us today David Jeunesse, and David is a writer and public speaker who specializes in communicating the benefits of new technologies to business decision makers. At IBM, he developed the messaging strategy for the ECM division, and he writes executive speeches and videos, and he produces IBM live events. Prior to 2010, Mr. Jeunesse performed a similar role with capture pioneer DataCap for 12 years. David is also a playwright with productions that have been performed off-Broadway, and his book, America on Display, profiled America's most unusual museums and collections. So right now, I'm going to turn things over to Nathaniel Palmer to begin our presentation today. Nathaniel.
Okay, thanks, Teresa, and thanks for joining us. So to start off with, why don't we talk about something that is not case management plus content analytics, but part of the same discussion. So process automation. If we were to say, what does process automation look like, I would say probably not dissimilar from this picture here. This is obviously a warehouse or a fulfillment center, and you see a fairly complex set of conveyor belts that have all sorts of pathways and permutations, and running across the conveyor belts are packages. Now, these pathways are fixed. They're not dynamic. They're not adjusting to what's in the package. The package goes wherever the pathway says to go. And in fact, the conveyor belt has no knowledge of the package. That's pretty consistent with not just many BPM systems, but a lot of other systems that are used for automating processes. The challenge is it doesn't look like a lot of our work. We can't have all of our process steps and the sequence of our work be scripted out in this way that's so fixed. So to extend that metaphor and really look at what does smart automation look like, I would say it looks more like this. Here's another fulfillment center. This one happens to be Amazon's, where it's using Amazon's investment in Kiva Robotics, the little orange, what are kind of flat robots, kind of look like a big Roomba. They're underneath these blue boxes. The robots know what's in the package, and you don't see fixed conveyor belts or fixed pathways. The robots have some discretion about where to put stuff, and they actually go through optimization of deciding where things are going to be placed so that they can speed the fulfillment process. Amazon wants to compress the time it takes from order to delivery of that product. And so the robots are able to do that, but the robots aren't just doing that on their own. They're not smart in the sense that they're thinking and making their own decisions. They're taking data, understanding of what's in the package, event data around where that package needs to go, other circumstances around that, and applying it against rules. And that combination of rules and data ultimately determine what the pathway is going to be, as opposed to predetermining that pathway, the way that we do with the conveyor belts and the way that we do with process automation. So we see that case management plus content analytics, the ability to manage dynamically and adaptively the process with an awareness and an understanding and intelligence about what is in that content. That combination enables smart automation. It's data-driven in that it understands the context of the work. It knows what's in that package, what's in the payload, and that determines where it is in the process. And it's goal-oriented. It's using rules to drive the best outcome. It knows what the goal is, and it's getting there in the way that is most expedient, and in that way, it's adapting to changes in the process, changes in circumstances, and to other events that are happening. So ultimately, smart automation is about understanding the process, rules, and content, combined with responding to business events, ultimately to expand the envelope of what can be automated and managed. So being able to do more, since there's only a finite amount of work today that we can really automate in the way that I showed in that first model. So when we think about case management, in essence, it's about responding to events based on rules which prescribe goals, and those goals define the outcome. So at its basic sense, when an event occurs, we know the objective in terms of what is the resolution of that event. That's the goal, that's the outcome. The process to get us to that resolution, that's going to be determined based on the underlying policy, the business rules, combined with the information that we're gathering along the way. So can I expand that model and look at it in terms of a common application of case management, a service resolution. A customer has a service issue, and the goal in the end is to resolve that issue. So what's going to happen along the way is there's going to be some prescribed steps, but really it's going to be driven based on the data that's received. First, we find out what the issue is. We iterate to better define that issue, to look for possible support resolutions and support paths. And we ultimately close the case or resolve the case when the support issue is resolved. But how we do that is driven not by a workflow, but by our policy, our rules, and the information that we're receiving, the understanding of the content and the context of that case. So, in the previous slide, I said that those sorts of flows are non-deterministic. And I'll admit, that's not a word I tend to use every day. But when we look at processes, we think and define things in terms of a deterministic process and a non-deterministic process. A deterministic process is one where all of the outcomes and pathways are predefined. And this is actually a live example. This is from a customer. And it's one that on the surface really does look like case management. The circumstances of this was very case management and goal-oriented. But the process that they had in place, and in this case, we were limited to an existing system that we re-engineered and came up with a better functioning process, but it was still entirely deterministic. All the pathways were defined, and if we wanted to know where we were in the process, it was prescribed by the process itself, not what was happening in that process. And that's really one of the key differences. This process is indifferent to the information that's flowing through it. In contrast, when we think about work that we do typically, and this is a survey that we conducted a couple of years ago, when we asked knowledge workers, how do they spend their day? the majority of their time is spent not purely ad hoc and not in a structured process that could be fully automated or is fully automated, but most of it happened in that wide space in between, where there's some definition to the work. It might be documented in some way. There's a fair amount of latitude. And again, we're talking about knowledge workers here. So we're giving them the opportunity to provide their expertise and at some points use their own subjective judgment. But from a operational standpoint, we need to be able to know that not necessarily they're doing each step in a prescribed way, but that the outcomes and the practices that they're following are consistent with our goals, our policies, and in some cases, a legal framework where it's work that might be regulated. So when we look at case management, it's the combination of not just having a process that isn't completely defined, but one where we can evolve that process based on the information that we received and manage that process based on an understanding of the context of that work, knowing what's inside of the package and knowing how rules apply to that work being performed. So it becomes critical that we have the combination of business rules, but also analytics to be able to make sense of the information that's coming, how that's applied to a rule, to be able to see trends and forecasts from an operational standpoint, as well as to understand predictively how that might affect work that's happening downstream. Yet it needs to be adaptive. In all of our business environments, there are very few processes that can process from beginning to end without some adaptation to the emergence of change or business events that happen while that work is being performed. So now I'm actually going to hand it back over to David, who's going to go through a couple of scenarios.
Wow, thank you, Nathaniel. I love how you've set this up, because case management is complex, and I think you've really provided the idea here that case is a flexible framework. And that's a real key concept. By the way, the word case is from the French word for frame. So for all you etymologists out there. So if you see it as a flexible frame that decision makers, knowledge workers, can use to organize information, then you can begin to see how analytics can supply another dimension of organization. So I've got some examples of IBM clients who are doing exactly what Nathaniel just described, and I think it'll really bring it into clear focus. So first of all, I am quite fortunate in my job here at IBM in that one of the things I get to do is coordinate client sessions for a big annual event we have every year focused on content and data. This year it was renamed World of Watson. It's been called Insight and Information on Demand, and any of those names may ring a bell. It happens late October every year in Las Vegas. So this year, several companies, a number of companies presented their case management solutions and really brought that stuff to life. But several of them are using analytics within the case framework, and that's what I'm happy to share with you today. So the name of the webinar today is 3 Ways that Analytics Can Help Power Case. So one of the examples, the first couple I have here for you, we might call performance analytics. And it would be a way to provide managers, supervisors, folks who are in charge of a process or a team with a feedback loop. I mean, every business process needs a feedback loop. And many ECM managers and business process folks will tell you they're still pulling data manually and creating spreadsheets and going through a very tedious process. And so here I want to tell you a couple stories to show how we've built a better mousetrap, if you're after a mouse. So first story is a fast-growing mortgage processor in North America who came to World of Watson to talk about their mortgage approval process. Perfect example of what Nathaniel has just laid out. It's a business process that has an outcome, an approved mortgage, hopefully, for the happy homeowner. But along the way, so many different things and exceptions and possibilities can pop up. And for example, I heard about this story recently, just getting ready to buy a house, and an inspection reveals a pipe sticking up out of the ground in the backyard. Well, they dig down and they find an old oil tank. Well, now we've got to bring in the EPA. We've got to dig that out. We've got to do testing. The whole mortgage process grinds to a halt, and a separate process starts. So this is not anything predictable, and you need to be able to have that kind of flexible framework to accommodate these kinds of things and keep an eye on it. So this mortgage processing company is, as I say, one of the fastest growing in North America, and they were rapidly outstripping their capacity to process mortgages because they were using a paper-based manual approval process, what they like to call stare and compare. Think about a mortgage can often involve 200-300 different pages, documents of all kinds of material, financial material, information about the property. So these can be very large, content-centric kind of business processes. And so they needed to move into case management. And what they opted to do is use a case manager on cloud offering that IBM has, and work with a business partner of IBM's called Pyramid Solutions, who have a lot of banking experience and offered some customization on top as well. And they got their cloud solution deployed. It had Case Manager has built-in analytics, and they took advantage of some of those to provide that operational data. If you look down from above, the account, the architecture, I suppose, would look something like this. The case management is hosted in the cloud. It makes no difference to the end user. They go into work, they start up their computer, they open up their screens, and they go to work. But it's running along. Pyramid built some UI tools on top, and I'll show you a couple screens in a minute. And so they're capturing from a Paraday system, and of course they're connecting to their loan origination system from Fiserv, which is an important aspect here. Once information is gathered and the approval process is proceeding, Fiserv plays an important role. So here's a look at a couple of the screens. They provided some ways for knowledge workers, to use the word Nathaniel used. These are folks that have to make decisions, and they need to perhaps talk to each other. And so here you can see in a kind of a social media way, they can make comments. This lady recently got married, so her name is different on the documents. And so, explaining things that people might need to understand. Here's a view that the manager has, the supervisor. Okay, I have this many loans. These are all in the process now, and they can drill down in here. But here's what's really nice, and this is the analytics piece, is they can have a dashboard like this. And this dashboard, just a screenshot of a typical supervisor dashboard, can take a look and see, okay, how many open loans do we have? How many days have they been open? You can organize it by how many days they've been open. So what loans have exceptions and are being processed there? Where do we stand against our service level agreements? If we've said we're going to process all loans within 21 days, do we have something coming up at 19 we need to accelerate and escalate? So it enables the supervisor to get an idea of what's happening. And these visualizations are kind of nice on the left-hand side. If you get into the red, you've got these meters that let you know how things are going. So here's, I think, a pretty good example of the first way that analytics can help a business process, and that is the visibility that managers need. So here's another example of a financial company that came to World of Watson, and they presented their story. Now, this is a company that has put together a number of different IBM ECM products, from capture to case to the platform, and so they have a total ECM. We call it an ECM stack, or a whole suite, and they wanted to be able to do performance analytics on the whole thing, and they were having an awful lot of trouble. They had built some reporting, but if somebody said, "Hey, I'd like a different view," well, that was a complicated thing. You had to involve IT to build you some new tools and metrics. So they wanted something that would be easier for them to use and customize. They wanted something real-time because they were getting their data late. They didn't feel that they were able to be proactive. They felt that their system also could often be skewed if there was a timeout or the system glitch of some kind. It would throw off the metrics entirely and make it invalid for them. So they needed something more robust that way. And they wanted to get out of manipulating spreadsheets. That was just, very important to the team. So they worked with a business partner of IBM's who has an analytics package that they added. As you can see, all of the different IBM products along the left. And it goes through this process. They have a dashboard. Now, the dashboard is what's cool. So here you can see this is a metric, and I just grabbed a few slides from their presentation, but this is a dynamic interface, this histogram here. You can drill down to seconds, or you can pull back and look at this by year. This is document retrievals. Here we can see what users are retrieving documents, how many they're retrieving, if that's something that's important to you. Here's the scanning process and how many people are creating batches and running batches through the capture. And again, you can drill down, or you can put several of these histograms together and get a view, more of a 360-degree view. On the left, you can have pie charts. So they really like this idea. The pie chart here is showing you all the different document types that are coming through. So all of this can give you an idea of how the team is operating together. Now, I've got some other examples coming up, but at this point, Nathaniel's going to give us some more perspective and a framework, to use that word, so that I think we'll have a better understanding when we come back to me.
Great, thanks, David. And those are really compelling examples. And actually, I'm going to build on that, talk about some concepts around both what David had talked about, as well as he mentioned, a framework for understanding why this matters and why we should be taking this seriously. So one is an illustration around changing expectations and what's happened and why we may have both been a little off guard and may not have drawn the right conclusions. So to illustrate that, I want to show two scenes. So the first one is St. Peter's Square outside of the Vatican, 2005. So there's an enormous crowd, people anxiously awaiting news. And if you remember the year and can guess by the location, this is where they're waiting for the announcement of the new pope. And it's a great scene, but it's also a great lens on this particular issue that I'm describing, because in a fairly rare, certainly once-in-a-lifetime scenario, we had two new popes chosen in a pretty close period of time. So the first was in 2005. The second was in 2013. Look at the difference in the audience. In 2005, everybody's there, and there's probably media watching. Well, we know there's media watching, and there were people maybe texting, emailing about the news. 2013 looks like probably any special event we have today. It looks probably like my daughter's dance recital, where everybody is experiencing that event through their phones. What happened between 2005 and 2013? Clearly, the arrival of the smartphone, beginning with the introduction of the iPhone, the iPad, and the various other smartphones that have come along. And that has fundamentally changed our expectations in how we want to interact with the companies that we do business with, the companies with whom we have relationships. It's changed our lives in many ways. We see the world now through our phone. If we look at some stats, research done by a company that surveys customers of banks, they noted that 60% of smartphone and tablet owners who switched their primary bank did so because mobile banking capabilities were either extremely important or are important. So people that went through the very painful and unpleasant exercise of changing their bank did that because the previous bank didn't provide sufficient mobile capabilities. And what is just as telling to me is the switch from 6 months prior, where that's a change of about 50%. And this survey was done a little bit over a year ago. I would say today the expectation is probably 90+%. Those that are changing those commercial relationships are doing so because of the lack of capability or the new company they're working with provides that capability which the other one didn't. Yet when we look at where banks, obviously mobile banking and work that's happening in mobile development in the banking and financial services industry has hit a fever pitch, and there's virtually nobody that doesn't have a mobile strategy today. But they may be missing the point in two ways. One, if you look at the types of capabilities that they're delivering, it ranges from doing basic transactions, doing account lookups. Most banks now offer the ability to take advantage of the camera on the phone to be able to do the depositing of a check by phone. But in parallel, when you look at the high-value services that banks are providing, beginning over the last, certainly in the last decade, but even going to the late 90s, there's a real shift to being able to use that relationship to sell more stuff, to cross-sell, upsell, to be able to provide life insurance, investment products, to do mortgages. And so rather than putting that capability on the phone, the customer-facing activities have been either centered in the bank, and there's been more emphasis on how do we enable the bank personnel, the front office personnel, the tellers, to be able to deliver more, or there's been the emergence of the robo-teller. Here's an example here. I just met with another bank recently that's a smaller one. The prominent red color here can probably give away what bank this is. The other bank that I met with is a regional bank out of Massachusetts, kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, but both very much doing the same thing, where they are priding themselves on the fact that they can provide 24/7 service at one of their branches where you can do everything you could with a fully staffed branch. If you look at the picture here, they've got on the left a full document screen, a document scanner. There's a camera for capturing the consumer, and then there's a video screen where you're having a conversation with somebody somewhere in the world, chances are on another continent, we're conducting business as they would face-to-face any hour of the day in that branch. But they kind of missed the point, didn't they? You're still going to a physical branch, going to a physical bank. Sure, you're not beholden to the same banker's hours, but is that the message that we got when we saw the rush to mobile and the demand in research like the one I just mentioned, where customers are really expecting to have that same complete experience in the environment that they choose? So what's keeping banks from doing that? Well, the initial thought was, they can't rely on the capabilities, and they still need to be able to provide things like the document scanner and those pieces. And they still need that face-to-face interaction. We've not reached a point with chatbots or other technology where we can have a true nuanced conversation at the complexity that's required to not just answer basic service questions, but actually to upsell and cross-sell. So the expectation is that that's still a face-to-face function. But why can't that happen in a mobile environment? This is the Amazon Kindle. Actually, it's the Kindle Fire. Kindle came out as an iPad competitor, replacing the original Kindle that was an electronic book. This is a tablet. And Amazon did something that was fairly ingenious, and that they made the ability to, at any moment in time, hit the Mayday button, and for you to have a live conversation with an actual human being, ostensibly to resolve any support issues with either your Kindle device or with the services Amazon is delivering through that. So you're basically any relationship you have with Amazon. Why couldn't that conversation be driven by a bank and be about life insurance or mortgages or some other upsell or more complex service and product that otherwise we expect that we have to do in a physical branch? There's no reason why it can't. The interaction capabilities are all right there. What enables that ultimately is case management. So looking at a scenario here, and in this case, this actually I borrowed from a presentation I did to a bunch of bankers a few months ago, and I got an early read that this idea of the bank being completely dematerialized, where you could have this transaction in any scenario or in any environment, like you can and like you have that expectation with a mobile device, that was a bridge too far for them. They said, one of the things that we're looking at, in addition to investing in these robo branches, we also have field reps who are, in some cases, that they're agents that are licensed to sell products on our behalf. In other cases, they're people that are out in the field. They're doing face-to-face work. But today, they're bringing a laptop with them, and they're bringing other things that allows them to give information and collect information, but they're not actually conducting business. So imagine a scenario where one of these reps is out in the field, and they're sitting across the kitchen table from a couple, and they're doing an annual review of their financial situation, and they realize that they're underinsured, that this is a great opportunity for them to increase their coverage. But let's say that their mortgage value has gone up, or they've had a new child, or there's some life change event where they need additional coverage. So in the past, they would be able to collect information and then follow up later. But you're losing value when that happens. So instead, in this scenario, they're identifying the need. They're beginning the actual process. They're pulling up live an underwriter. They're in that live chat. They're doing things like what David was describing, where they're capturing the different information and nuances around that particular policy or around that customer situation. They're getting a check from the customer, binding those terms and that policy. That policy is being underwritten in the back. The documents are being generated, and the end-to-end process is created without losing time or without having the break in the continuity of the process. Now, in reality, from a technical standpoint and a regulatory standpoint, this could happen entirely online. And in fact, now one of the fastest growing mortgage providers has no brick and mortar retail operations. They're doing everything online. But the part that they're not doing is this live interaction. Frankly, what would make the process work a lot better and would allow for things to be resolved in a more expedient way. And that's one of the critical aspects of this. And the second part that was misunderstood, in my opinion, with what is really driving mobile demand. It's not that I want to do a whole lot of complex operations on my phone. It's that my phone is an extension of me, and I now have an expectation to get immediate resolution to anything that I have on my phone. I want to be able to call up a service provider or the status of something. I want to do it now. And we actually have a framework for understanding that and assessing value to that. So this curve and this graph, which has two axes that don't have hard numbers on it, because frankly, it's going to vary from event to event. But the basic premise of this, regardless of the exact calculation, is going to be consistent across all business areas, all business types and business events. And that premise is that the faster we're able to provide the appropriate response to an event, the greater that value is going to be. And that means whatever period of time elapses, we're losing opportunity, losing potential value. There's opportunity cost in any delay. And it's a curve, not a straight line. So most of that value, most of that opportunity cost is happening up front. So if we look at that in a little more detail, we can break it out into two things, or four things from the standpoint of when we're talking about time. There's the time from when the event happens up until the point that we understand what to do. Then there is the time to actually implement the response. Now, most of our investments and our transformation and re-engineering has focused on that second part, on the act side. Some, but not enough, has been focused on the understanding, coming up with what is the solution. The reality is having a faster response, meaning processing that response faster, that's not where we're capturing value, and that's not where we're losing opportunity today. That's where the line is flat. It's around understanding what is it that we need to do, capturing that understanding as effectively and expeditiously as possible. That's where the opportunity is, and that's why adding analytics to case management providing the means to making information actionable, and analytics giving us the means to understand how to act, what that action should be. So David's going to continue on that with some other examples. David, I hand it back to you.
Well, Nathaniel, you've done it again. You have set me up perfectly for what I think we could call the second way that analytics can help power case management, and that is with customer understanding, sometimes called customer analytics. And one of them even involves mobile case management. So we're hitting all the marks. So here's a major U.S. bank, long-time IBM ECM customer, certainly well-versed in management for many of their lines of business. But they recognize the opportunity that Nathaniel has just laid out here. And that...
pardon me, David, something seems to have happened with your sound here. Sorry to interrupt here, but just as you started speaking.
Something happened, huh?
You're back now.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Can you start over on this slide again?
Absolutely. Sorry. It's a miracle that we all get together electronically and we tell these stories. So once in a while when something happens, definitely bear with us because we're back, and I believe it's worth it. I was talking about this, the second wave of analytics being around customer analytics, as Nathaniel set up. And in fact, I have a story here in which mobile case management with analytics plays a key role in exactly the point Nathaniel was making. So this customer has a treasury management division, and they have some very wealthy customers, and they wanted an opportunity for their sales-facing people to be able to go into the field and take the process to the customer. So now you've got Case Manager on an iPad, you've got an e-signature type solution, and you can do that onboarding And of course, there's a lot of information you need to gather from the customer. So, let's do that together, sitting in your office. Do it over lunch. We'll do it wherever it's most convenient for you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. So that's a nice device. But now let's add the analytics to it, which can help with that onboarding process. So you've got to make sure, for example, that you have all the documentation to open a Treasury account. So banks have something that they call not in good order, NIGO, and that means that they don't have all the documents they need, or perhaps they don't have all the signatures they need on the document. They have the right document, but you didn't sign line 42. So they can use analytics to do a quick check of, do we have all the documents? Are we in good order? Is everything signed? They can also utilize analytics to go and retrieve what they already know about this customer. Perhaps they're a long time, they have other products with the bank. There's information about their beneficiaries. There's information about their preferences, how they like to be communicated to. There's nothing people hate more than being asked the same question all the time. Each time you go down the process, what's your Social Security number? We've all been through it. So here, analytics can help make that process a lot smoother. Here's another great example. This is a pension fund that utilizes analytics in a couple of ways. One of the things that all organizations that have products think about is, how can we tailor a personalized product? How can we offer the right product at the right time? It doesn't have to be a bank or financial services organization to have this value. And so this pension fund utilizes analytics within the case. So every customer is a case. Every case has all the information that they know about the customer, including the ability to pull in social media. And let's say the pension customer just announces on Facebook a new grandbaby, a new grandchild in the family. Great. Well, that's information that you can use the next time you have a conversation. Obviously, you don't say, we're watching your account, but hey, anything you want to mention, any new developments in your family, you know ahead of time how to bring it up and address it. And what a perfect time to talk about a college savings fund. So the right product at the right time, because you have customer understanding. Another way they use it is when some folks, and this is pretty common, pull from the, they notice every month that they're taking $100, $200 out of their principal. Obviously, they're trying to make ends meet. They need a little bit of help. Here's a great time to offer perhaps a mutual fund, a little cash management fund. We can drop the interest in. You can pull from that, leave the principal alone. Everybody's happy with that kind of thing. So CASE can provide that next best action that Nathaniel was talking about. Dutch Tax is doing that. Now we're going to get out of the financial services and talk about a government, but it's the exact same issue here. They have a process that they kind of borrowed from Gartner. They call it Bimodal IT, where they have a on-premises, very staid process for dealing with exceptions, appeals, people saying, I have the wrong tax information. You taxed me against the wrong thing. So there's objections, appeals, a whole process. But they decided to try a case management approach on a select number and ramp it up and see how it goes. And they came to World of Watson to present that story. So here's how they deal with objections and appeals. They have something like 4.5 million of them a year on 30 different types of taxes. So it's a serious issue. And when it is an appeal or an objection, it involves a knowledge worker here and something they call logistic workflow processing. And so this now launches a case, and that case, they can begin to deal with the exceptions and work it through. You've got the performance analytics to understand how they're doing and whether if anybody needs help. And what they laid out for us at World of Watson was, now the framework exists to which they can add and here's a couple of suggestions. They wanted to add digital delivery at the front end. That is the ability to bring in forms and information via mobile device. So there you go. On the second, they wanted to use some analytics to help prioritize. Not all of these appeals are equal. Not all of them have the same financial element to them. So let's use analytics to help prioritize that. The framework exists. We can build it in. We can use content analytics to help automate some handling, provide more information about the citizen, go out and search and get information that might be relevant to help the knowledge worker make a decision more quickly. And then finally, file sync and share to create kind of a citizen locker where their content, they can go in and see their content, add content, and so forth. So the last thing I wanted to close out with is really the third way that analytics can power a case, and that is really the classic content analytics use case of crawling across documents like a human would be, reading documents, reading text, bringing back phrases, and looking for connections in information. And a great example of that is what they're doing at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Think about their mission. Their mission is to make sure we're safe from nuclear power plants, from nuclear submarines, from even medical devices that use elements of nuclear in them. So there's an awful lot of scientific literature and continually new literature being produced and being published that needs to be brought in. And so they use CASE to create the framework, and then they use Watson Content Analytics to go and comb through all of the relevant information around a particular licensing, inspection, or enforcement type action, and CASE gives them that framework and helps them keep the associations together and lets them do much more than a human being could do on their own, which is really the point here. And then they follow a detailed Darwin information typing architecture to create these reports and to use for authoring. And again, CASE provides that framework. That's not necessarily analytics, but it shows you that CASE can help you move through the life cycle of a process like this. And the very last example, again, probably the best example, the reason I saved it for last, using content analytics, using performance analytics, and using even another element called predictive analytics. This transportation agency is charged with making sure our cars are safe and our roads are safe. And so that's a very key thing that they do. And so they need to go through and gather information from accident reports, from consumer surveys about cars, from repair. I mean, the sources are all over the place of data and content. They need to bring them together around particular models of cars. And so they're using Watson Content Analytics for the text searches. They're using Cognos for the reporting and the performance analytics. CASE is the framework and allows them to take action with workflows and so forth. And they're even using an IBM product called SPSS to predict, for predictive, to look for red flags when certain issues are popping up. One of the great examples is there's a car that was notorious for when you hit a pothole, the brakes would fail for a second or two. And this caused some accidents. It took a while to figure out why these cars were rear-ending other cars as they approached, red lights or stoplights or so forth. And then they realized the road conditions and the car had something to do with each other. That's an association, and that's what analytics is really good at. And so those, I think, are some excellent examples of really where we're going with Case Manager and analytics together that shows performance analytics, customer analytics, and content analytics for better search and retrieval of key information. So if you want to try Case Manager, see what it's like, experience it, there's a link I have in here to go and try an interactive demo. And you just get a feel for what it's like to work with Case. So on that note, we're going to go to Teresa, who hopefully has been gathering a few questions for us.
I have. I just wanted to mention that, well, first of all, thank you. We've just been listening to David Janess of IBM, and we've also been listening to Nathaniel Palmer. The slide that David has up here for the IBM Case Manager, when you download a copy of the slides, you'll have this link for future reference, but also that link is in the resource list that's to the right side of the slide area. So feel free to click it now, and it's just going to open up in another browser tab, and after the webinar is over with, you can check it out. And it's a really nice interactive demo that they have there, so I do encourage you to check on that. And then also, I'm just going to put up some contact information for Nathaniel as well, because he just wanted you to be able to reach out to him. And just with all the wealth of information, he's a fabulous resource moving forward as well. And then so I do want to jump into some of the questions that we have here. And David, I wanted to start with you. A first question that has come up here, someone is asking about what analytics are integrated into Case Manager.
Well, excellent question. You have to see, and I think you've gotten that sense that Case Manager is often all things that our ECM put together into this framework. So you'd have capture, you would have these workflows that can be set up. You would have the ability to zip everything up into a persistent record. So you'd have a sort of a records management compliance aspect to Case, which is appealing on all of those levels. And at IBM, they have that. They've added all that to Case Manager. And they've also taken advantage of the fact that we're in the analytics division. Our sister divisions, such as Cognos, I mentioned that at the National Highway Organization. SPSS is predictive analytics. But Cognos comes standard in Case Manager. Sorry, I've got to answer the question. And so does Watson Content Analytics. A basic version of Watson Content Analytics ships standard with Case Manager. So you have that built in as you go forward.
Well, do you need Case Manager to run these analytics packages?
You don't, and there's analytics you can just run on content. There's analytics you can run. Well, like the distiller example is a business partner who is running it across all of the ECM stack. So wherever there's data or content, you can run these analytics. It's just Case gives you that extra value of the framework, and I think I hope we've made the case for why that's important.
And can you integrate other analytics packages into Case Manager?
You can, and that's I neglected to mention that NRC is a business partner named Vega Solutions, and they've done a lot of extra integrations on top of Case. It's a matter of APIs and web services. I'm not a technical person; I'm a marketing person, but we see the SPSS example, which is not embedded in Case, but it is something that with a services engagement you can do. We see something called I2, which is investigative analytics, looking for entities, looking perhaps for people who are using aliases and looking for those connections throughout wherever information is kept to determine if somebody really is who they say they are. That's pretty key in claims and in other processes that and government too, especially around benefits. They want to make sure people aren't defrauding the government. So they use those type of analytics as well. And it's just a matter of bolting it into the framework.
Before I send this next question over to Nathaniel, I just want to mention out to everyone that also in the resources list to the right of your slide area, there is a link in there to a new AIIM research paper on content analytics. And I invite you to click on that. And again, it's just going to open up in a new browser tab, and you can complete the download after the webinar is over with. But that's a lot of highlights and just for the latest research that our market intelligence team and Bob Larrabee, who heads up that team, has done recently, and just wanted to make that available to you to get some additional benchmarking information and to help put this into context and help make the case to your own organization, to your teammates and to your superiors, to the executive team, that this is something that your organization needs to be considering. So just more resources to help you bring all this to improve everything within your own organization. Nathaniel, when you were speaking and in the section when you were talking a lot about with banking, someone was asking some questions here about security at banks. Do you see like mobile banking, emphasizing security, or just what kind of security improvements do you see on the horizon with mobile banking?
Oh, sure. Well, there's that is a critical area, and it's an area of focus for all aspects of digital business, not just the mobile side of it, but security is an obviously great concern. So in terms of things that are emerging, some of it has already been dealt with, but there are some advantages in using actual best-of-breed case management frameworks. So I mentioned at the beginning that one of the capabilities today that's pretty commonplace is being able to do a mobile upload of a check. And that is different than, and you're using the camera on a mobile device. So it's a device-independent capability, but it's not taking a picture of a check and emailing that or using the basic services on the check on the device other than having access to a camera. So software is going to manage the capture and transmission of that. It's going to encrypt that information. And that's something that is an area that there is real best-of-breed capability around. David was talking about the ability to do checking really at the time of information capture and submission for completeness, for information that's misunderstood. When you get to things that are more complex than just a check, such as being able to validate the completeness of an application or a policy document, there's a fair amount of logic that can go into that. And that's not stuff that's going to be on the phone. And part of that logic can be various security provisions, both to secure the transmission of that, which is one aspect of security, but the other aspect of security is around identity fraud and how that can be used to prevent somebody from using a mobile device to access your account or to do any kind of nefarious activity on your account or with your money. So all of that logic is happening not on the phone, not on the device, but in the cloud and within the broader case management environment. There's core banking systems and core systems that are in place, but you're not going to have all that security logic built in there. You need this middle tier that case management and analytics provide to do that kind of validation and authentication and securitizing of the transaction. So that's why it's critical that it's not simply my mobile app that I've built and I'm putting out for my customers, but enabling that end-to-end process independent of any device that's going to be used at the front end of that process.
Thank you. It's a really good explanation there. We are getting close to the end of our webinar hour, and just want to mention out to everyone that the AIM conference is coming up in just a few months. So we're going to be in Orlando, Florida in March, and I know we already have some keynote speakers confirmed. A lot of the sessions have been confirmed. So if you go to aimconference.com, you can get the latest information about the agenda and the activities taking place, and certainly also for registration information. There is the early bird pricing going on right now, so just it's a fabulous resource for coming together, for meeting peers, the networking, the collaboration, and certainly just the educational programs that are being put forth from a lot of really smart people in our industry. So I encourage you to come to the conference. It's going to be a really good time, and I look forward to seeing you there. And then just also want to remind everyone of the resources that we do have available on the web on the form for you right now to the right of your slide area. Don't forget to download a copy of the slides. And then also when the webinar is over, that survey is going to pop open. Appreciate and greatly value your feedback. And also just very much want to thank our underwriter today, IBM. Without the support from our solution providers, AIM wouldn't be able to bring you these free educational programs. So thank you very much, IBM, for your support and contributions. As we do bring our webinar to a close, I do want to leave you with the closing thoughts or key takeaways from the speakers themselves. And I'd like to start first with Nathaniel Palmer of Serco. Your closing thoughts today.
Thank you, Teresa. Well, first of all, I've gone to AIM almost every year since 1991, so I echo that. I would close in part by saying I hope I see you at AIM. Second, if there was one theme that I would want to take away or have you take away from this, is that traditionally we've thought about case management, these sorts of technologies, content management, as a place where we put information and where knowledge workers make sense of that information. As David has illustrated, and hopefully has come across in my illustrations, the better use of that, or where the real innovation is going to come, is from how we use those systems to better understand that information, to make that information more effective and make the action we take with that more efficient and more expedient, but also to come up with better conclusions and better decisions.
Thank you. And David Janess of IBM, your closing thoughts today.
Well, I've only gone to AIM since 1997, so I guess I'm the newbie. But I say that for a reason, because I think back then there was a first era of enterprise content management that was all about capture, archive, govern, the foundation of ECM. And the second era began perhaps 10 years ago with the invention of case management and business process management and collaboration around case, this sort of activation of content around business processes. And lately we've been seeing it on mobile and in the cloud. But I think what we're seeing now is the beginning of a third wave or a third era which uses analytics. And we see analytics everywhere now in all of our life. It's in our car. It's in our homes. It's even, if you have a Fitbit, it's on your wrist, which is really a device for delivering analytics about your body. So, why not apply that to content and around the ECM and business processes? And that's what's happening, and that's what I was able to share some of the stories of leaders, but I believe we'll see a lot more of this, a lot more adoption of analytics around content and within case as we go forward.
Thank you, David. And that is all we have time for today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And for AIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we'll see you next time, and have a great afternoon.